woodworking here. Starting a little bit early so we can make sure all the tech is up to date. You know what I mean? All this crazy technology. What's going on? I worked in the tech industry for years, 7 years actually, in telecommunications. Oh boy, what a riot that was. 7 years actually in telecommunications. Still so much of that fuzzy, huh? Testing, testing. Testing, testing. Wow, that audio, man. What is that? Okay, that seems to be a little better. Is that better? No. Not even close. Not even close to better. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that seems to be a little better. I really don't know what's going on with this thing. You buy some semi-expensive microphone equipment, you expect it to work. Still so fuzzy, huh? Let's see, audio. Let's go down a little bit, huh? Testing, testing. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing again. Okay, it seems to be a little better. The volume is down. Still some fuzziness coming in. Don't understand what the problem is with this thing. That's alright. Seems to be a little bit better here. Is this camera too, maybe? Maybe if we turn the camera off, that might be a little better. Yeah, maybe we'll make it a little smaller. That's good. That's a little better. Okay, guys. I hope you're all having a wonderful Wednesday evening. Hope you had a good week. Hump day. We're halfway through the week. I don't know where that got started. What a weird tradition that is. Hump day. We should start doing every day as, oh, let's not ruin the planet day. Save the environment. That should be every day. So, plenty to talk about, guys, as always. Tons of stuff in the news. We've got quite a bit going on here, y'all. So we're going to stick to the typical format. We're going to go start out with the bad news and end on the good news. That's always a good way to do it. I think that's how we're gonna do this live stream podcast for most of the time. Is just start out with the bad news, just to light a fire under people's asses, and then we'll move on to the good news. So, all right, our first topic, we're just gonna dive right back into, boom, of course, the Ohio disaster. Now, this is something that usually, when something like this happens, it's in and out of the news cycle within a week. And then you don't hear a peep. You just don't hear a peep at all from any mainstream news articles about it at all. But in this case, it looks like there is continuing to be coverage because of the scale of how bad that this one was. I mean, we're talking about massive scale. So this in the news looks like it was yesterday. The state of Ohio is suing Norfolk Southern. So obviously great news. And anybody who's in Ohio, who's a citizen of Ohio, I would implore you to also get involved as much as possible. Call who you have to call, email who you have to email to figure out how you can be part of holding, not just Norfolk Southern accountable, but your government and your legislators for allowing this kind of stuff to happen. I mean, it's so hilarious to me, these corporations, when in their advertising, same thing with the government and all that kind of, on the aesthetic on the outside is that, we have to care about the environment, we have to save the world, but only if that applies to what they can tax you on or what they can sell you, when it comes to accountability with the environment, when stuff like this happens, it's crickets from the government and these corporate institutions. So that's how you got to be able to take everything you read and hear with a grain of salt. But most importantly, mainstream news is going to get you to feel and think a type of way. Obviously they're all good and we need to have all of them. There has to be mainstream sources and, lesser known sources all the way to fringe theories. Freedom of speech is important. And, even though it's almost criminal how some organizations can literally print misinformation and disinformation, but that's for another day. So, yeah, I mean, the suffering going on over here is incredible. The people that were close to this thing, and anybody near Yeah, 5,000 residents of East Palestine. Anybody who had to evacuate and not knowing whether or not you can go back to your home has to be one of the most terrifying experiences ever. And this one is just so big that it's on everybody's mind. But this kind of stuff happens everywhere in this country, and nobody cares. Literally, no one cares. And you know, it's a shame. It's a shame because we have to start caring. Otherwise, we're in trouble. You know, there's going to be no more. We're just we're going to make the world one giant empty weedy parking lot. That's going to be humanity's contribution to Earth's history. That sounds fun, huh, for everybody? But yeah. So speaking of this, before I forget, I wanted to shout out this guy's channel. So out of all the stuff that I've watched, any of the documentaries, anything like that, any news articles, this guy. On second thought, how corporate greed destroyed East Palestine is the best video I've ever seen. Really well done, really well edited, infinitely more well researched than my channel. This guy goes out there and actually is on the scene. So go check that out. Drop him a like and subscribe because his content is awesome. And watch that documentary. It's about 40 minutes, and it will just truly terrify you to your core. If you just picture yourself as one of these residents. Terrible, and so many times, like what's happening right now within the banking industries too. It's basically criminal what these people get away with, literal theft, and nothing happens. Nothing happens. There's no accountability because that's what happens when you have the runaway train of unfettered. You can't even really call it capitalism anymore because it's a global techno-feudalism is really what's happened here, and. The Earth's a finite planet with finite resources, and this cannot continue much longer. So, Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw apologized before Congress last week for the impact. We're sorry. We're really sorry. We're sorry. I mean, how long before apologies are going to cut it for us, guys? It's crazy to me. It's crazy. So, he didn't make specific commitments to pay for long-term health and economic harm. Of course he didn't. Of course he didn't. So, the railroad has promised more than $20 million so far to help the Ohio community recover, while also announcing several voluntary safety upgrades. I mean, that's all just woo-woo. Ohio's Attorney General indicates the cleanup costs will be high. Yeah, I mean, not just the cleanup costs, but the costs of these residents' health that are in the immediate blast zone of this thing. I mean, we're talking long-term problems here, and that's just, you know, within the one little radius zone. You go beyond that, and if it's in the river, in the environment, it's in the soil, it's millions and millions of people end up getting affected by something like this, and it's just nobody cares. Oh well, move on. You know, we got bigger fish to fry, I guess. We got to debate whether or not, you know, it's a crime for banks and these corporations to literally steal from us. So we'll talk more about that kind of stuff later with our good old boy Terrance McKenna as we end our live streams with some of his wisdom. So yeah, I mean, so many residents are just outraged. You can only imagine. So what I've heard from what that documentary, they only sent everybody within that zip code $1,000 so far. That's what they get. And all of these situations, what governments and corporations do is obfuscate, cover up, lie, ignore, deny. I mean, the playbook it's going on a century now of this kind of stuff happening, where corporations have become such gigantic monopolies that they don't have to play by anybody's rules. They make the rules, and we believe it. And they poison us and the entire planet and everything on it in the process, and no one cares. It's just one of these endless cycles of doom, I guess you could say. But yeah, guys, just be aware of this. If you can, get involved, donate. If you can get out there physically on the ground, maybe. I'm not sure how much more you can do now. out there on the ground, since this happened quite a bit ago. But yeah, I mean, just keep this in mind when you're going throughout your day. Try to fight back against it a little bit. So I thought this one was interesting. The fight to define green hydrogen could determine America's future emissions. Now, I just like to stay informed on all the green terminology that's been blasted to us now for decades. Like I said, there's so much wishy-washy information out there, and misinformation and disinformation and co-opted movements that everything, like I said earlier, you really take with a grain of salt. But yeah, I mean, we got billions of dollars in federal subsidies now from the current government to make our future green. So I like to stay informed on what they mean by that. Some things are good, some things are bad. Again, I don't think for sure that everybody in the government and these corporations is malicious, intentionally evil. I do think that a certain percentage of them are, but most people are just, oblivious and ignorant, which is the problem. So going on here, yeah, this Inflation Reduction Act, I guess that's what I call it. I mean, they put environmental related things that should be, the title of the bill should have a direct name that reflects what's in the bill. To me, that's unbelievable that wouldn't be the case. The government just sneaks in all this other stuff under the same title, and for the average person who doesn't, is working and doesn't have the time to read it, it's intentionally misleading so many times, but yeah, going on here, the tax credit designed to advance the production of clean hydrogen. Scientists and climate advocates warn that without rigorous guidelines dictating who is eligible for the subsidy, the government could spend billions propping up hydrogen production facilities with enormous carbon footprints, wiping out many other climate gains catalyzed by the legislation. Yeah, see, and this is where they're just going to botch it up. Current emissions of the power sector is 1.5 gigatons. So this is completely contrary to the U.S. climate goals. The stakes are already extremely high. Well, yeah, I mean, the stakes, it's over. It's over unless there's an immediate stop and an immediate reversal from every single human on this planet with our energy consumption. We're deep shit, guys. Building a domestic clean energy industry is a key part to the Biden administration's climate strategy. The fuel has the potential to replace oil, gas, coal in a range of applications, from aviation to industrial processes like steel making and chemical manufacturing. Most importantly, it does not emit carbon when it's used. The dispute over the tax credit comes down to the usual business of producing hydrogen. Current supplies made by reforming natural gas, which releases greenhouse gases. The tax credit is designed to reduce the cost of carbon-free method that requires only electricity, water, and a machine called electrolyzer. Producers can earn up to $3 per kilogram of hydrogen they produce this way. The tax credit has no cap and could pay out more than $100 billion over the lifetime of the credit. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about any of this. Obviously, we have to do something, and this is our government's idea of doing something. Late last year, a prominent energy modeling group at Princeton University circulated new research showing that hydrogen producers could all but eliminate this emissions impact by following three principles. These are the rigorous rules that the Natural Resources Defense Council and other environmental groups want the Treasury to adopt. And a lot of geothermal. Wilson Ricks, who led the Princeton study, noted that Wood Mackenzie made several different assumptions that led to the conclusion. For one, authors didn't include clean electricity subsidies from the Inflation Reduction Act, which leads to significantly higher total costs for both annual and hourly matching. He said it will be up to the Treasury to parse these differences. See, and this is what happens when you have this bureaucracy of late stage capitalism, late stage, omni side of civilization and politics. I mean, something like this should be our main focus, and there's just so much bureaucracy of back and forth of who's going to pay for it and why, and is it even real, or no, it's not even real, or the planet's not imploding, it's no such thing as human climate change, or it's just whatever, just craziness. That being said, yeah, this is the market, financially and politically in the government. This is where it's heading. It's heading in a hydrogen direction. Yeah, so we'll keep learning about that. We'll keep staying informed on that and do hydrogen tech, guys. Hydro tech. Moving on. This one's kind of fun. Bacteria designed like corals to achieve a carbon neutral cement production. So pretty cool here. New forms of cement. Another one of my favorite, cement is hempcrete. We'll probably pick up a couple articles on that in future live stream episodes. Hempcrete is definitely another interesting way of a building material in the big building industry, construction industry. So let's see here. In 2021 alone, 2.9 billion tons of CO2 were emitted through the industry's cement production, corresponding to more than 7% of the total global CO2 emissions. The emissions occur when the cement is heated, as the high temperatures cause CO2 to release. Calcium carbonate, yeah, so this is the problem. The process is seen in nature where ocean corals also capture CO2, but it takes centuries. With our enzyme, it takes only a few minutes, says Colleen Manuyamwa. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. They built some kind of enzyme here that functions as a coral. I mean, so much tech that all these scientists and engineers develop is literally based on things in nature or mimicking something in nature. It's fascinating. It's like, who's really coming up with this stuff, guys? Do we think we're the hotshots? I don't think so. That being said, maybe the planet is just working through us to achieve its means. So it will work like a bit like a green circle. Factory releases of CO2 during heating. We capture it in the bioreactor, which binds the CO2 to the calcium carbonate. The factory then reheats the calcium carbonate to make new cement, and once again we capture the CO2 released. Says Zhenji Zhang. Corals as a source of inspiration. The ambition to find a circular solution for the capture of CO2 from a polluting industry is far from unique, but the technology researchers are working on is very unique and not yet patented. Other biologists typically try to design bacteria that mimic photosynthesis, which plants capture CO2 from the air and convert it to sugar. The problem is that this is very difficult to do, and that's why we say, forget about plants, we want to mimic corals, says Professor Ivan Mijakovic, who is the head of a group and came up with the original idea for the project. Oh, this is a Croatian professor? Likes the coral idea, huh? Just as plants on land capture CO2 from the air, the ocean's corals also capture CO2 when they are building elaborate structures we know as coral reefs. CO2 is captured in maritime construction, so to speak, which is made of calcium carbonate just like cement. We have genetically engineered bacteria to behave like the ocean corals. Our bacteria also grow underwater. When the solution is to be scaled up, the cell factory inside the bioreactor will also have to be liquid. The researchers can already say now that this sets special requirements for the bioreactor because, well, the cell factory is liquid. The calcium carbonate formed in the reactor is solid material. In the design phase, it is therefore important to take into account the fact that the solid limestone will need to be transported easily and efficiently out of the reactor. So yeah, apparently huge strides. Pretty cool tech, guys. I like keeping up to date current on these heavy duty science ones, since I'm such a plebeian and I didn't end up going to get fancy degrees in these certain specializations and sectors, which really are the tip of the spear. It's really up to these guys more so than any of us individuals in this civilization, to be focused morally and have a core sense of where we need to go to fix the problem. It has to be the really smart people, the really affluent people at the top who've been blessed enough to get some really, really good schooling and some quality education and spend decades in the field. They need to be the tip of the spear, fighting back against, number one, government, number two, corporate overlords, and number three, bad science or junk science or that kind of thing, and misinformation. So, yeah, super cool. Yeah, innovation is always challenging, and some days definitely easier than others, but I believe within a few years the solution will exist as one of the several solutions to remove CO2 from the atmosphere and to help slow down climate change. So yeah, it looks like they're getting creative here, guys, which is cool. We need to get creative too. Each in our own lives. So, now we'll move on to my favorite part of the episode. This is where we go over a Terrance McKenna lecture, who is just one of my idols, the late Terrance. If you've been watching other live streams, he's definitely an eccentric type of guy, but certainly well educated, certainly has good intentions, and just is so eloquent in the way he puts together what I think is the best way to move forward and to restore the planet, to save the planet, to save each other. Because this type of stuff, guys, is a slippery slope. I mean, there's no, like I said earlier at the beginning of the episode, this is something, luckily this has remained in the news cycle for a long time, but that's only because it's so big of a thing, it's so disastrous. If you remember, the Gulf oil spill, that one remained in the news cycle for about 2-3 months before everybody got bored and stopped caring. But stuff like this kind of stuff happens every day on a micro scale or on a medium scale, and in these cases in a macro scale, whether it does macro damage, they have to acknowledge it. So but then again, they're going to do whatever they can to obfuscate, the media who's reporting it, the government who should be holding people accountable, and the corporation itself, the causer of the issue, are all just going to obfuscate. They're going to lie. They're going to cover up. They're going to protect their bottom line and, do what's best for shareholders. And what that means is blow it up, guys. We'll deal with the environmental problems later. Pay off whoever we have to pay off in this shithole town of East Palestine, who we don't care, people who we don't care about, who are completely dispensable to us. Along with our freight, along with the physical freight, it's the literal material goods that they're carrying. And they had that track cleared within 24 hours for more trains to deliver the products on the rails. So, I mean, that's wild to me, guys. Wild. We are literally a runaway train of a civilization here when it comes to stuff like this. This is only the beginning of continued major scale disasters due to whatever. Negligence probably is the number one thing, or ignorance, and then worst case scenario, the malicious people who want this to happen. People who are so greedy, people who only care about achieving, they hit the billion, but they need to get to the next, they need to get to 10 billion. And they need to, it's insane. That type of Western thought, and it's mostly Western, I'm sure it exists in the East too, but that type of mentality and behavior has got to end. It's got to end. So, like I said, like I was saying, we can start with ourselves. So, we're going to go to the Terrance McKenna speech. This is one of my favorite ones. I couldn't find it on here. If you notice, a lot of these, this is the word count. They don't have the transcript of it. So you can help fill these in for this guy's website. But I found one on YouTube that didn't have the transcript, so I'm starting to do it myself here. This is like my favorite one from Terrance as far as a recruitment speech to get get people on board with, this type of thought process to save the world. Literally, guys. So, without further ado, we'll just dive right in. I will put my best Terrance voice on for you guys. And so on and so forth. So, we're gonna kill the. Well, let's see here. I think what we have to do is think in terms of exhaustion of our own cultural forms. I mean, that's what we're living through, is a global dying created by the exhaustion of our cultural forms and the vitality of the cultural forms that we see in these so-called primitive people. I call them pre-literate people. They have nothing. So again, I'm going to edit this as we go, guys, and bold things that I want to embolden and stuff like that too, so bear with me. But his main I want to say motif is going to be the archaic revival and the restoration of shamanistic type cultures, of shamanism. I know that sounds freaky to a lot of people and it's going to scare you, but it really shouldn't. Like I said, do your research on it. For most of our human evolution, we were these type of people. So-called science, likes to drill into our head, and mainstream archaeology, mainstream anthropology, mainstream sources, mainstream thought has us think of these primitive peoples as savages, and they weren't. But I'll continue here. As Terrance likes to say, I call them pre-literate people. They have nothing, and they seem to get along just fine with nothing. What they do seem to have that we cannot seem to get a grip on is a kind of dynamic equilibrium with the environment and a peace of mind in the felt experience of the moment. So this resonates with me big time. These are two things that we don't have as a society. We cannot seem to make peace with nature as human beings. As individuals, it's very hard for us to be at peace with ourselves. I mean, I consider my own life, the search for peace of mind, forget enlightenment, forget shunyata, for all this stuff, it's just a little peace of mind would be a tremendous boon as far as I can see. So I really think that there's a confluence here of themes and possibilities that has this richly plotted texture that always lets you know that you're in the presence of a higher order of things. It's that the shamans who we admire, who we idolize, and seem to be at the center of this environment in the warm jungle in the tropics, that we find necessary to destroy. So it's a perfect image of us at war with not only ourselves, but with nature itself. The mere fact that we continue to destroy indigenous peoples and shamanism and these types of life and the jungles themselves is just proof that we're at war constantly. So you've all heard how the Amazon and the Congo Basin in eastern Indonesia are all being cleared and lumbered and turned into cattle ranches. This is a tragedy, obviously, understand and can perceive the dynamics of that, but how to make sense of the situation, whereas the World Bank and the IMF attempt to halt this kind of destruction on the other side of the coin. The United States State Department and the DEA and these agencies propose that we are planning to carry out the defoliation of the Wazaga Basin, and so there's a schizophrenia here that isn't academic. I mean, we're trying to get the patient well, or are we trying to pull the plug? One by one, we seem to be acting in both dimensions simultaneously, and I think it's because we have not, in this culture, awakened to the depth of the crisis. Yeah, and it's so true, guys. The depth of the crisis that surrounds us. Nobody really is acknowledging the depth of the crisis. And sorry, as the machine that I use to, the software that I use to transcript this from the YouTube video, it has all kinds of bugs and glitches, errors, so I'm fixing those as we go. But yeah, I mean, the depth, it's literally the final countdown here, guys. we really, really do not have much time left to get our priorities straight. So that's why I'm calling this the Terrance recruitment speech with my own little twist on it, because I kind of want to hone this in and use this to drive home the point. Maybe write a song, maybe write poetry with some of these elements in here. That let's get our shit together. We can do it. We can do it. We can save each other. We can save the planet. We can all become healthy again. And I'm not even advocating necessarily that we have to go 100% back, like Terrance would say, or some of these other mainstream, very eccentric thinkers that let's become pre-literate peoples again. No, but let's kind of transcend the consumption model that we've been so enslaved by. Let's do that. Moving on here. There's a lot of kind of self-congratulatory backslapping go around these days over the fact that the communists everywhere in hot water, and they have to admit that they did it wrong. And this gives a lot of satisfaction to the people who feel that means we did it right. We didn't do it right. We didn't. The Republicans and anybody on the right who thinks that who constantly attack lefties or communists, communism just ran out of gas before capitalism did. They're both awful ideas, pretty good in their origin stories, but it turns out really weren't that well thought out. So, yeah. They did it wrong and now admit they did it wrong. Yeah, at least, they do admit that they did it wrong. We do it wrong and have yet to even raise the possibility of turning away from what we are doing. The terminal contradictions. The internal contradictions of Marxism were based on false definition of what people are. People do not respond to central planning, hortatory propaganda, and stereotyping. Neither do people respond to an ethos of a self-denial or a view of human beings that denies the fact that we have certain itches which must be scratched. So, I think that the collapse of Marxism is only the collapse of the outer edge of societal and civilizing assumptions that we have all made after all, Marxism is nothing more than a millenarian or retread of Christian millenarianism. Yeah, so Christian millenarianism is, an ideal utopia that there will be a period of 1,000 years when the Lord returns, blah, 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 that after the revelations, after apocalypse, there'll be 1,000-year millennium of, peace and plenty and utopia. And so is modern science, yet another secular retread of Christian. Yeah, so this is so true. Science has literally become Christian millenarianism. So our culture is in trouble. Big trouble with a capital T. Not trouble at all. We are in a terminal crisis. Definitely, guys. A bifurcation that it can go only one of two ways here. A horror beyond our wildest dreams, or a breakthrough to dignity, decency, community. And caring beyond our wildest imagination. Amen, Terrance. Yeah, I mean, see, guys, this guy, he's just incredible. Now, where do you look for models? Where do you go? Where do you look for models? Where do you go? Where you go for, yeah, I mean right here, boom. Nature has been playing this game for 3 billion years in this planet. We've been playing the game of the apostles of Christian scientism for about 5,000 or 2,000 years here. Nature has an economy of elegance, a style that if we could but emulate, it could rise out of the rubble that we are making of the planet. You know, it was the geographer Carl Sauer who said, man found the planet a climax primeval forest, and he noticed the gender here. He will leave the planet a weedy lot. Yeah, that's the metaphor I used earlier here. A weedy lot, well, now this is a metaphor. Where you change the climax, drain the forest, but it's also true by clearing land. We promote the kind of plant evolution that stresses very rapid seed production and annual cycles of growth. Yeah, I mean, what he said about Marxism is so true, guys. we said about nature, since capitalism isn't a model we can use, since communism obviously isn't a model we can use, we have to get really creative with the models that we use. And I think the best model that we can go for here is basing it on nature. We already do it. We just need to go all in. Go all in on it. Nature has been playing this game for 3 billion years. I know, it's just so true. So, a weedy lot. Well, now this is a metaphor where you change the climax. Drain the forest for weeds, but it's also true by clearing land we promote the kind of plant evolution that stresses very rapid seed production and annual cycles of growth. Yeah, so I mean this is bad. And in other words, weeds and this tendency to find perfection and then leave rubble in our wake has haunted us for the past 4,000 years of history. And now with the ozone shield disappearing, with the acid rain falling to earth, yeah, I mean, this is just devastating. CO2 rising. Levels of strontium, chlorofluorocarbons. He says, and you know a lot. And you know, insofar as, oh, come on, man. Let's put that on the next page. You know, the litany we have now, one last chance to fish or cut bait. And the place where nature has provided the models for how to respond to this situation is the climax of the rainforest. I agree. Only the climax of tropical rainforest has the kind of complexity to signal transfer the movement of nutritional materials, movement of electromagnetic radiation that we find in the modern city. It is such a cliche that the city is the jungle. The problem is, it isn't a jungle enough. And I think it's the task of new shamans to take the metaphor of the jungle, which is a metaphor of tremendous wealth, tremendous variety, from a tremendous outpouring of form and energy. Potential fulfillment. Various bifurcation patterns of flow to take that and enrich our own lives. With it, and the way this is done is by empowering the presence of experience. The main thing that you get with these so-called primitive pre-literate people, and with people like Nicole who have spent time in this situation, is they are in the moment. They know they're in the moment. They know how to have fun. They know how to work. They know how to live. The reason they understand this is because they are focused within the confines of felt presence of experience. They do not live by abstraction. And abstraction is the knife poised at our hearts. We so much victims of abstraction that with the earth in flames, we can barely rouse ourselves to wander across the room and look at the thermostat. That's the level of disimpassioning that abstraction has laid upon us. It is depressing, isn't it? I think basically what we are, kind of a green anarchy. I like it. That's kind of what I want to identify. We may change the name of the live stream is to Green Anarchy, baby. Woo! I don't know, it's kind of extreme and edgy, but it's cool. An effort to revivify social forms that have been atrophied in the West. At least since the destruction of Lucius, probably in most places, thousands of years before that. This is our last chance. I have done the best I could in terms of trying to sift through all these options as a communicator in the best way out. You know, I could only do my best, and that's what you get. I have done the best I could in terms of trying to sift through all these options, and as a communicator, offer the best way out. You know, I could only do my best, and so that's what you get. I can't preach scientism because I don't believe in it. I can't preach Buddhism because I can't understand it. I love that one. Phelps, the felt. If the only thing I can preach is the felt present of immediate experience, which for me came through psychedelics, which are not drugs, but plants. It's a perversion of language to try and derail this thing into talk of drugs. It is. Psychedelics are not drugs. There are spirits in the natural world that come to us in this way, and so far as I can tell, This is the only way that they come to us. I don't know about that. I think I disagree with him here. I think there are other ways to achieve this sense of being, this sense of empathy, this sense of the felt presence of immediate experience with each other, with the world without the use of psychedelics. But I truly do think it's the best option. It's the quickest way to get there. It's the quickest way to really break down the ego, break down dogma, break down boundaries in reality. Terrance talks about this quote all the time: is the truth is reality isn't stranger than fiction. It's stranger than the strangest fiction that we can even suppose. So it's just, there's so many to pretend that scientism or even Buddhism is the end all be all answer, or Christianity is silly. It's really silly. But I think that something that is a lot more concrete is all of these things kind of compacted into one, but not really. It's hard to explain unless you kind of feel this felt presence of immediate experience. Like I said, you don't need psychedelics like he's advocating here. This just onsets it the best. But there is other ways to achieve truly, and that's why he loves shamanism so much, and all of these pre-literate peoples, is that they had this ability to have a peace of mind within the felt presence of immediate experience, which is just truly invaluable, and it's totally achievable. We just have to reverse course and stop driving our collective car off of the mountain through the guardrail and into the ditch and blowing up the planet, poisoning everything and everyone in it. So I think that with the use of psychedelics and this type of thought process, we can move towards preventing us doing that, from going through the guardrail, if we haven't already done that. I mean, when you see stuff like this, technical, we dropped the nukes in 1945. That should have been the biggest wake-up call of all time. Hey, let's get our shit together and stop and mindlessly killing each other, as well as banding together and figuring our stuff out. So scary looking explosions to this day. 2023, here we are in March, still having these awful events happen. So yeah, there are spirits in the natural world that come to us in this way, and so far as I can tell, it's the only way they come to us. That is rapid enough for us to have an impact on the global population. So he talks about this weekend would be this woman spent a ton of time in the Amazon. That's one of the scary things, is a lot of these oral traditions of how to create these psychedelics has disappeared because these generations are just wiped out and they're gone. Sad. So let's see here. We can't save this kind of knowledge. We cannot save ourselves, because this kind of knowledge is ourselves culture. This is my favorite line. Culture is a garment which you put on, a medical system, pieces of jewelry which you wrap around your throat, your neck. religious ideals are like objects, which you push through pierced nostrils and earlobes. If we cannot come to term with that which allows us to give birth, with these, to die with dignity, and to live in health, then what kind of future do we have? Well, no future at all. So this is not a meeting of obstructionists or enthusiasts for some private vista or transcendence. This is a meeting of political activists. People who are socially committed themselves to each other, to the larger idea of community, and who understand that when you talk about Gaia, it's only an abstraction unless you talk about plants. Division between the masculine and the feminine is only trivial. A difference between men and women is fundamentally a division between plants and animals. Plants are the enveloping feminine matrix of control and the refurbishment. Animals are something invented by plants to move seeds around. Yeah, I know, that's my favorite line ever. So let's see. Let me highlight this one. A difference between men and women, how did he say this? A difference between men and women is fundamentally a division between plants and animals. Plants are the enveloping feminine matrix of control and refurbishment. Animals are something invented by plants to move seeds around. An extremely yang solution to a particular problem which they face. I mean, it's so true. So the archaic revival, if it means anything, it means reconnecting with the guy. Oh, see, guy in mind. This is how the software picked it up. This should be guy in mind, which is Gaia is the Greek word for Earth, Mother Earth. If there's a new religion we need to create, should be this. It should be something Gaia related. Which is a vegetable mind, a feminine enfolding boundaries. Yeah. So the archaic revival, if it means anything, feminine enfolding boundary dissolving planetary mind. That is not an abstraction, not a stereotype, not something used to create auditory propaganda, but a living, breathing reality, a reality which is the only thing which stands between us and Armageddon. History is a kind of horrified realization that something has been lost. I feel that. I don't know if you guys feel that, but I feel that heavy. that there is an itch hard to scratch in the civilized context that we have out of fear. Really descended, how does he say this? That there is in us an itch hard to scratch in the civilized context that we have out of fear. We descended into patterns of domination of each other and of the environment, of our children, of our social relations with the exogenous groups. We have descended into a dominator pattern that is basically based on clutching on fear. I'm sure most of you have heard me argue that this is the consequence of ceasing basically to do enough hallucinogens in the diet. That in fact what human beings were flirting with over many, many tens of millennia, let's say from 100,000 years ago to 20,000. Years ago, human beings were in a flirtatious situation with the symbiotic relationship to nature. Vegetable nature. Now you all know that what classic symbiosis and biology is. Now you all know what classic symbiosis is in biology. It's where, let's take the example of a little fish who lives in the sea, anemone, and a big fish. Don't bother it. It gains protection from the CNN. Oh, sea anemone. And the gains access to larger prey which come to investigate. The little fish of that kind of symbiont symbiosis is genetically locked in. And if you take the little fish away from the anemone and put it, let us say, in an aquarium without anemones, it doesn't die, it doesn't go into the immediate. That's an interesting take, yeah. It doesn't go into an immediate psychological or physiological crisis. No, what happens is it simply has a low body weight and a short lifespan. In other words, It is under stress, and I hope I'm not deluding myself, but I believe that the lost secret of human emergence make that 2 sentences. I hope I'm not deluding myself. But I believe that the lost secret of human emergence, the undefined catalyst that took on a very bright monkey and turned that species into a tormented, self-reflecting poet-dreamer, that catalyst has to be sought in these alkaloids in food that were catalyzing higher states of intellectual activity. And I pointed out to you ad nauseum I'm sure the reciprocal feedback relationship that was working there in the case of the mushroom in the Welt. Yeah, in Africa, mushrooms would provide low-dose visual acuity, which was feeding back into the hunter and gathering process. Making those animals with increased visual acuity more adaptive, successful. Hence more reproductively successful. Hence, they're outbreeding their competitors at higher doses. Oh, man. Higher doses of psilocybin actually causes or generalized arousal, which includes sexual arousal. Again, it becomes a catalyst for increased reproductive success. More instances of copulation in a situation like that led to more successful births of those into family structures where the alkaloid has been accepted into the food chain. Well, this would be only an obscure topic of interest to primatologists if it weren't for the fact that that it is a crisis in consciousness. Let's give that a big old bold there. Crisis in consciousness, which confronts us globally. Consciousness is the commodity that if we do not have enough of it, do not produce it fast enough, then the momentum of the processes we set in motion in our ignorance is going to sterilize the planet and do us all in. Why is that happening? I don't understand. It's so weird. We have to have consciousness. Well, then you look at the smorgasbord of ethnographic possibilities and you discover this institution of shamanism. It is the institution of planner, of visionary, of manager, of large system coordinator. That's what it's about. You call it magic on one level. You call it curing. You call it folk psychiatry or weather prediction. Shamans have been involved in all of these things. The forest people, it is ordinary to live in a different cultural dimension than we do. Dimensions which to us are completely value dark. To them are completely transparent. Dimensions which to us are extremely rich and complex. The inner world of the nucleus of the atom, let us say, are for them totally value dark. They don't even cognize the possibility of asking the question. But nevertheless, the specialization in these very domains, in these various is not something where one is as good as another consciousness. Oh wow, we're already on 6 of 15. Whoa, we got a lot more to go. All right, guys, so we'll continue this next week. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Make sure you live that green revolution. See you guys next week, Wednesday. Bye.